I'll never forget that cloudy winter day when my life changed forever. I was this awkward 7-year-old kid with hand-me-down shoes, 2 sizes too big, stuck sitting alone at the lunch table as usual. "All right, class, we have a new student joining us today," Miss Honey announced. "This is James. Why don't you introduce yourself?" The new boy stepped forward, fumbling with his light blue jumper. "I'm Jay." "James," he mumbled, his gray eyes darting around nervously until they landed on me. An unfamiliar warmth flickered across his face as our eyes met. I quickly looked away, puzzled. Was there something wrong with me? Did this stranger pity the school lipper? "You can take the empty seat next to Ian," Miss Honey said warmly. A few snickers erupted from the class. "Looks like his table is full already," Chloe King, the class bully, sneered. My face burned as the others laughed. Great, just another punchline to add to my reputation as the messed up kid. I shrank in my seat, praying to disappear. But then James walked over and slid into the seat across from me without hesitation. "Can I sit here?" he asked with a friendly smile, that little gap between his teeth peeking out. I could only manage an awkward nod, completely baffled by this kid's kindness. Little did I know, it was the start of an unbreakable bond that would drastically alter my entire world. From that day on, James became my closest friend, really my only friend in this backward little town. While the other kids continued branding me as the school leper and messed up kid, James saw past all the cruelty and ugliness. He accepted me for who I was, the boy whose dad had another family across town that everyone liked to gossip about. James was the only one who genuinely understood what it felt like being different, being born into a place that didn't want us. His family may have been the wealthy mayor's family, but he faced his own stigmas as the only gay kid in town. That difference, that struggle to belong, is what brought us together from day one. Over the next 10 years, our bond just grew stronger and stronger. While the bullying and isolation never stopped, at least I had James by my side through it all. He got me in a way nobody else ever could or wanted to. We were best friends through the good times and bad, brothers in arms against this judgmental hellhole of a hometown. I never really had a reason to dream about leaving or wonder what life could be like beyond the narrow-minded views of our small conservative world. Why would I when James was the only person I needed? He was my sun, my universe, my everything wrapped up in one kind-hearted, curly-haired package. Little did I know, he would also become the key to finally breaking free. For years, James and I were inseparable. We did everything together, went to school, hung out after you name it. He became like a second member of my family, probably because he spent more time at my house than his own. I could tell James wasn't as comfortable being himself around his strict parents, especially his dad, the uptight mayor obsessed with appearances and status. No way would they accept having a gay son. But at my place, James never had to hide who he truly was. My mom adored him like a second son. She knew how much I struggled to fit in, so she made sure James always felt welcome in our home, no matter what. With her pure heart and warmth, she created a safe space for us both to just exist. After school, we'd hightail it to my room and shut the world out. We could joke around, listen to music, play video games, all the normal friend stuff. Except James was so much more than a friend to me, even if he didn't realize it yet. I started noticing little things about him that made my stomach flutter. His adorable smile with that goofy gap tooth, the way his curls bounced when he got excited, how his olive skin glowed in the sunlight. Harmless things at first, so I thought. Before long, my feelings morphed into something much deeper, something that felt forbidden and scary yet incredible at the same time. I was falling for my best friend, the only gay boy in town besides me, and I had no idea what to do about it. My feelings for James were getting harder and harder to ignore or brush off as some little boy crush, especially once we hit our senior year of high school and the pressures of life after graduation started weighing on us. That's when the party invites from the popular crowd like Chloe King started rolling in. Of course, they only wanted James around because of his family status, but he managed to convince me to tag along to one of Chloe's infamous pool parties. "Come on, Aaron, it'll be fun," James had pleaded, giving me those irresistible puppy dog eyes. "Chloe even set you up with a date. Her friend Mary, she's really nice." I wanted to argue that nice girls weren't really my type, but I couldn't bring myself to admit the truth, that James was the only one I wanted, even if he didn't see me the same way. So I begrudgingly agreed to be his wingman for the night. When the party rolled around, I immediately regretted my decision. Wandering around the King mansion in my ridiculous swim trunks, I stuck out like a sore thumb among all the beautiful people. James looked quintessentially gorgeous as always, his sculpted olive skin glistening under the golden sun. I had to tear my eyes away before I got caught staring and gave away my feelings. Instead, I ducked off to grab a beer, already wanting the night to be over. That's when Mary, the pretty blonde I was supposed to be impressing, sauntered over. Hey there, stranger, Mary purred, sauntering over with a flirtatious smile. My heart dropped to my stomach. I could already sense where this was going. Hey, Chase, Mary, I stammered, trying to stay calm and play it cool. She was a sweet girl, but not at all who I wanted to be wrapped up with at this party. Her baby blue eyes dropped to my lips as she stepped closer. You look amazing tonight, Ian. I swallowed hard. Thanks, you too. Before I could get another word out, Mary closed the gap and crashed her lips against mine. In there I tensed up, completely caught off guard. This was not at all what I wanted, but how could I push her away without breaking her heart? As I pulled back, putting some distance between us, I saw him. James, standing there with a look of shock and hurt rippling across his handsome face. James, I can explain, I started, but he had already turned and stormed off through the crowd. I took a shaky breath, turning back to Mary. As much as it pained me, I had to be honest. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have led you on. The truth is, I'm in love with someone else. The dejected look in her eyes cut me deep, but she simply nodded in understanding. It's James, isn't it? My jaw dropped as she walked away, leaving me surrounded by the pulsing party I no longer wanted any part of. The only thought rushing through my mind was finding James, and finally confessing my love. I tore through the party after James, dodging drunken revelers and calling out his name. Finally, I spotted him disappearing up the stairs and I raced to follow. He led me into one of the King Mansion's many guest rooms before whirling around, fire blazing in those gorgeous gray eyes. Is it true? He demanded, voice thick with emotion. What Mary said, that you love me? My heart pounded in my chest as I searched for the words, for the courage. This was the moment I had dreamed about yet dreaded for so long. Finally, I gave a small nod. Yes. God, yes, James, I love you. Before I could ramble any further, he closed the space between us in 2 strides. His hands cradled my face as his lips captured mine in a searing, passionate kiss that left me utterly weak. I melted into him, kissing him back hungrily like a starving man. All the years of longing, of wanting him, finally came pouring out. Our tongues danced feverishly as our bodies pressed closer, seeking that electrifying friction. A loud pounding at the door made us jump apart, eyes wide like 2 kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. James? You in there? Chloe's voice carried through. Panic washed over me as James quickly smoothed his tousled curls and moved to crack the door. Hey, Chloe, what's up? He said with forced nonchalance. My heart was still racing from our heated embrace as their voices became muffled in the hall. Had I just risked everything by finally giving into my feeling? What would happen if anyone found out about us? After Chloe interrupted our heated moment, James slipped back into the bedroom, shutting the door quietly behind him. An awkward tension hung in the air as we avoided direct eye contact. We need to talk about what just happened. I finally managed to say, breaking the silence. My mind was still reeling from the intensity of our kiss and the new reality of my feelings being reciprocated. James ran a hand through his musk curls. Yeah, you're right. But not here. His gray eyes finally met mine with an unspoken understanding. Can you come over later? We'll have privacy to really discuss this at my place. I gave a nod, my heart doing somersaults at the prospect of being alone with him. As much as I tried to tamp it down, a dangerous spark of hope was igniting within me. This all felt so surreal, like one of my deepest desires coming true. The rest of the party became a blur as we played it cool around our peers, avoiding any suspicious glances. I made up an excuse to ditch Mary while James did the same with Chloe. My mind couldn't focus on anything or anyone else anyway, only the burning questions of what this could finally mean for us. Later that night, I snuck over to James's house through the familiar backyard entry I'd used thousands of times before. But this time, everything felt different, charged with an electrifying new energy. As he let me in, with that crooked smile playing across his lips, I knew there was no going back now. Once in his bedroom with the door locked, blocking out the outside world, it was like a dam finally burst. As soon as James's bedroom door clicked shut, he had me pinned against it, his body pressing deliciously against mine. Our mouths crashed together in a fevered kiss, picking up right where we left off at the party. God, I wanted this for so long, he groaned against my lips between heated kisses. His strong hands roamed over my back, pulling me even closer until there was no space left between us. I gasped at the feeling of his hardness grinding against my own growing arousal. This was really happening. All those years of fantasizing about James, of wanting him, was finally becoming reality in the most incredible way. Our kisses grew more frantic, all that pent-up desire and longing pouring out. Desperate for skin, I tugged James's shirt up and over his head, finally getting to run my hands over the chiseled chest and abs I'd admired for years. He was perfection. James made quick work of shedding my clothes as well, until we were both beautifully naked and flush against each other. The feeling of his body as warmth and hardness against me nearly made my knees buckle. "Need you," I panted hotly against the crook of his neck as he trailed scorching kisses along my throat. "James, please." Needing no further encouragement, he suddenly hoisted me up, allowing me to wrap my legs around his narrow waist. Our arousal slid together in the most heavenly friction as he carried us towards the bed, our passionate reunion far from over. For so long, James had just been an unfulfilled fantasy, someone I could only admire and desire from afar. But now finally having him in the most intimate way, it was pure ecstasy and euphoria unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. In the hazy aftermath, James and I lay tangled up in each other, body slick with sweat and the sheets in total disarray. I traced idle patterns across his toned chest, still trying to process that this had actually happened between us. That was, I breathed out, at a loss for words to encapsulate the earth-shattering intensity. James turned his head, pressing a slow, languid kiss to my lips. Amazing, incredible, life-changing, his gray eyes sparkled with pure adoration. I smiled against his mouth. All of the above, after yearning for this intimate connection for so long, finally experiencing it with the man I loved, was sublime bliss. As our kisses deepened again, I knew there was no going back to just being friends. This nudge had irrevocably changed everything between us in the most wonderful way. James was mine now, and I was his forever. Over the next few months until graduation, we stayed wrapped up in our secret love bubble. Stolen kisses, hushed whispers, feverish couplings at every opportunity. We couldn't get enough of each other now that the floodgates had opened. Of course, we had to keep things extremely discreet around town. The last thing we wanted was vicious gossip and bullying from the small-minded people here. So we played it cool with Mary and Chloe, who thankfully kept our secret after walking in on us at the party. When graduation finally came, I thought our problems would be solved. I had my scholarship to get us both out of this town. James's parents were paying his way too. As long as he played nice with Chloe until then, we could finally escape and start fresh somewhere new. But the night before my big move, James dropped a bombshell that nearly shattered everything. "They're forcing me to marry Chloe." The words fell like a leaden weight between us as James stared at me with anguished eyes. My heart plummeted and it felt like the air had been sucked from the room. What? Why? Was all I could choke out, reeling from his confession. James dragged a frustrated hand through his unruly curls. "It's some fucked up arrangement between our families to merge their business empires. They've had this plan since we were kids." White-hot rage simmered under my skin. How could they be so cruel, so backwards? We had finally found our slice of hard-won happiness, and now it was all crumbling to dust. "No," I said firmly, cradling his face in my hands. "No, I won't let them take you away from me. Not after everything we've been through to be together." Our lips crashed together in a desperate, needy kiss. James moaned softly as our bodies melted against each other, cherishing this intimacy we might soon be torn from. "We'll run away if we have to," I murmured feverishly between kisses trailing along his jaw. "You and me against the world, like always. As long as we're together, that's all that matters." James gave the tiniest nod, his eyes glistening with unshed tears of fear and uncertainty. No matter what awaited us out there, I knew our love could conquer anything if we stayed unified. That would be my mission from here on out, protecting the sacred bond we had forged over all these years at any cost. Because losing James wasn't an option, not after he had become my everything. My partner, my soulmate, my world. With him by my side, we could survive any storm. We tried so hard to stay strong and unified after that night, when the vow was made to face the world together no matter what. James and I were hopelessly, recklessly in love, a force that couldn't be contained or stamped out, even by his controlling parent. The first few months after leaving our small town were pure bliss. We had a cramped but cozy apartment near campus, finally able to be ourselves openly without fear of judgment. Waking up tangled together, exchanging sleepy kisses before class, walking hand in hand through the quad. All those simple intimacies we never could have back home. But the higher I soared with my newfound freedom, the more I sensed James still being grounded by the weight of his family's expectations. The not-so-subtle reminders of who he was supposed to become, husband to Chloe and heir to the family empire. His father's disapproving scowls and curt reprimands during visits chipped away at James's hardened resolve over time. I could see the conflict and guilt etched across his beautiful features more and more. The constant pressure of living up to their narrow, bigoted view of how life should be. It killed me watching the man I love crumble inwardly from those toxic influences. No matter how tightly I held him at night, whispering reassurances that our love could endure, the self-doubt would creep back in. Doubts that maybe this was all a teenage lapse in judgment. Fears that we could never truly escape the shackles of where we came from. The despondent wondering if his family was right, if our love was somehow fundamentally wrong and deviant. I felt utterly helpless in those moments. Like I was slowly losing the battle to keep James's light burning bright. Our love was like a delicate flame flickering between us, and moving out of our small town did little to protect it. With each passing phase in a new setting, that prized ember of happiness wavered, teetering ever closer toward being smothered out. In those first few months of college, James and I drifted through classes and campus life, still holding on to the persistent dream of escaping our pasts and forging a fresh start. But we couldn't outrun the weight of everyone's expectations. I could see the toll it takes on James, having that persistent pressure trailing behind us like a dark cloud. With every new landscape, the constant questioning of whether this experience was really what we should be pursuing nags at our resilient stride. Could we truly outrun the old doubts and misery of our hometown existences? It became harder for James' wavering spirit to fully embrace this revived life we'd envisioned. And when his spirit wavered, I felt my own optimism and hope for our bond wavering too. The potent dreams we'd carried of bonding through shared struggles, they flickered like old ghosts haunting the corners of our small-town lives we'd left behind. But that didn't stop his family's judgments from seeping in, feeding hesitations that perhaps this path my love and I had mapped wasn't what it should be. As our first semester at college winded down, James spent more time fending off the dark influences pushing him to morph into the air of lavish expectations his parents so crudely clung to. His weariness watching me try to convince Chloe and her circle how happily we could belong here. That exhausted, uncomfortable refrain of trying to justify our collegiate fantasies, echoing his frustrating relationship with every new routine, which drained his resiliency more and more. It was all darkly adding up to a familiar, murky forecast in which James and Mary must admit together how they would have to retreat from our once bold plan to let this revelatory love story follow its path. Another phase would go by, another chapter closing, where more and more doubt would creep in and weigh further on our dreams of flourishing together under expansive possibilities. The way Chloe's friendship offered that light of optimism in our previous innocent lives. This new reality of constantly questioning whether we'd wind up adrift again. It was all starting to take on that ominous air of cliché, uncertainty looming over increasingly dim prospects for our love to defy those narrow-minded norms we'd been able to escape from time to time. Each new chapter, with more obstacles awaiting to block our path, another series would progress into familiar territory. Chloe's familiarity could pose yet another challenge to our shared vision, until eventually the only thing James and Mary would confront was more of that same darkness pressing on their relationships with its own oppressive effect. With so many looming pressures and obstacles of its own, it was like we could feel that desire and bond between us weaken and fade, threatening to completely open the doors for that same reality Chloe had already started to welcome in the couple's social circle. Looking back now, it seems like Mary and I were just becoming more drawn into escalating tensions from other perspectives that contradict those drawn ones we'd embrace on their own versus relating to James' casual outlook that we're better off resume pursue would. It's like we could start to become further distant from the start of the lighthearted spark that had so pleased her at the pool that night. Now, of course, it would turn out to be some cliches that may ease her, but then those gleaming looks would just glint to evaluate her merits with approval for what Chloe herself had hoped would please desire her assessment at the blonde. My mind was wandering to James' sculpted body, that tanned olive skin glistening under the light I'd been so captivated by. Of course, that alluring image drawing me, and with the prospect of gradually drawing things together between us had been so entangled. I knew the unwitting embrace into the simmering whims had been slipping from a place where our arousal-seeking desire could have been revel. So finding James now consuming more in this heated sea, I couldn't forget how he'd provoked that sculpted grace from Chloe. It should have savored the anticipation to appreciate the potential to admire his chiseled chest, however fleeting that would be for me going forward. Wanting to taste her sweetness, I had to indulge in that invitation, so fervently kissing back on the wondrous feeling of arousal her rapturously warm nature had inspired, until the brilliant revelation came. In those dark moments when I felt our love slipping away, when James was drowning under the crushing weight of everyone's expectations, I had to cling to the core of what bonded us in the first place. Our connection went deeper than just youthful lust or societal defiance. We were kindred spirits who found light in each other when the rest of the world left us cold and alone. Without James by my side through all the years of being outcast, I may have withered away completely in that suffocating small town. But his kind-hearted warmth, that blinding smile with the adorable gap tooth, it was my sunshine breaking through the darkness. Just having him in my life made the cruelty and alienation bearable. We gave each other the strength and resilience to. So as the pressures of our new realities in college chipped away at our dreamed future together, I had to remind both of us about the precious gift we'd already been given. This love wasn't some fleeting high school infatuation. It was forged in fire, battle-tested, and something eternal. In our most intimate moments, hands roaming reverently over familiar expanses of bare skin, I would trail kisses along his jawline until our eyes met. "You're my world, James," I'd murmur with hushed intensity. "Nothing, and no one will ever change that." A spark would reignite in his troubled gray eyes as he pulled me impossibly closer, clinging to me like a life raft in turbulent waters. My everything. That's what we became for each other through all our struggles. And continuing to draw strength from our bond, leaning on that profound connection, was the only way we'd make it through this latest squall of adversity. I couldn't let fear or hatred win, not after fighting so hard for this love. With a renewed sense of determination, I vowed to weather any storm as long as James was still by my side. Our love may have been forged in fire, but it wasn't fragile. It was an inextinguishable force. We just had to keep fanning those flames. The turmoil and self-doubt continued waging war within James as our college days marched on. With every judgmental look or biting comment from his father, I could see his defenses cracking a little more. The immense pressure to conform, to bury the truth of who he really was, bore down on him relentlessly. But I refused to let James surrender himself or our love to those narrow expectations, not after everything we'd been through together. Our connection was strengthened by battles and hardships most couldn't fathom. So I did the only thing I could. I drew on the depth of our bond to keep reigniting that spark inside him before it would be permanently extinguished. With each day that passed, I found new creative ways to remind James of our love's incredible power and beauty. Tender kisses littered across the tan skin of his chiseled torso as we tangled in the sheets. Hushed reassurances whispered against the shell of his ear as we walked across campus, recounting cherished memories from our childhood that highlighted our fated connection. Slowly, through this outpouring of devoted affection and unwavering support, I could see James's eyes regain that brilliant spark of hope and determination, his radiant smile returning bit by bit. The love we shared was simply too strong, too brilliant to be stamped out by fear or hate. We had both fought through